Hello, welcome to the intro video for Arcanum. Arcanum is a programmable spell mod that lets you create your own spells that can target entities yourself or can do, spawn projectiles, that sort of thing. To start off, you need to craft the Arcanum Forge as well as the CAD, which will let you, start off with the mod. It needs gold, crystals and bone, and some stone, so a pretty standard recipe. Take some time to craft. Place it nearby because you'll probably come back to it quite often. And then we need the CAD. The CAD would be, to start off with, would be the copper one, but there are also more tiers. There's iron, gold, thorium, cobalt, and adamantite. And the copper CAD is the lowest quality one, and with the lowest stats, and it requires the subsequent one to craft the new one, right? So you need the copper CAD to craft the iron to craft gold, that sort of thing. Adamantite is the best, with the best stats and efficiency. The way that this sort of is supposed to work is that you get the CAD and you put it onto the offhand slot, which allows you to still do stuff with your hands while in your main hand, while being able to cast magic in your offhand. Right now we don't have any spells, so we should try and make one. When you go into the Arcanum Forge, you'll see a UI with 3 slots, as well as on the left hand side the spell library. The spell library will be empty for people who are just starting off, but if you're made spells, you'll see them there. You can then just click create new spell to get into the grid, and then the grid will have a 9x9 hex grid that lets you where you place the nodes, and on the left side you'd have the actual list of nodes you can place in your grid. To start off with, when you're a new player, you'll only have 8 or so, which is pre-selected, that let you do at least some simple spells. In this case, it's the ability to heal yourself and the ability to damage entities or yourself. And when you place a node and try to compile, if a node requires inputs and outputs, it will let you know. So in this case, the healing node requires an entity input. In this case, I put myself, and it also requires an amount input, which in this case I put as a number. Once those requirements are all filled, and you've put in a number like 10, you can click compile, and it will show you a cost and properly compile the spell. So this is the first spell made, and with this you'd put it into a slot on the copper CAD. And now if you go out of the editor and let's say something happens, you take some fall damage or you just take damage in general, you'll be able to right click to cast, right click hold to cast, and it should heal you. Sweet. So the idea of this is that it basically allows you to hot swap different effects and targeting ways to cast magic. To get more nodes, you need to get these codexes. There are logic, effect, and trigger codexes, and how that works is that each one, when you right click it, will give you a new node that will show up in the Arcanum Forge when you're crafting a new spell. To get these nodes, you can get it by basically killing enemies or by finding them in loot chests in dungeons. The idea here was to sort of tie the progression of the mod to the Hytale RPG experience of going around taking down dungeons and pretty much just playing the game. So here we're using just an AoE spell to sort of kill as many of these as quickly as possible. But yeah, as you can see, as they die, there's a small chance that they'll drop one of these codexes, and yeah, you'll be able to use it and get a new node. Additionally, with the unlocking of nodes, you will actually get more mana per 10 or so of nodes unlocked. So the idea here is not only are you getting the ability to craft more complex spells, but you're also getting a bigger mana pool to craft them as well. So this part of the progression is probably the most important if you want to have the craziest spells and stuff for Arcanum. There's also dev tools like a master node and removal node, which will basically give you all of the nodes or remove all of them to reset your progression. So now that we've gotten lots of more nodes, we can make a new spell. One of the effects currently in the game, or in the mod, is a speed boost spell, which is called Haste, and it requires a couple of things. It requires an entity to target with the speed. In this case, you know, it'd be the player or yourself. It then requires an amount, and as well as a duration. So the amount is related to how powerful the speed boost will be, and the duration is how long it will last. Once all of those requirements are filled out and you name the spell, you should get a working speed boost spell. Assigning this to the copper CAD and then casting it with right click, you should see like a noticeable increase when you're running, right, compared to the default speed. Also notice that this spell took a pretty big chunk of your mana using the copper CAD, and it also added some burnout to the player. Burnout is essentially how many times you can cast any spell in like succession, and once that burnout has reached a certain limit, you won't be able to cast magic for some time. Casting the same spell with a different CAD device, casting assistance device, will allow the spell to work better, because the efficiency of the higher tier CADs means that it costs less, which means you can do more. And so in this case, assuming that you wanted to cast the same speed spell with the Adamantite CAD, you can actually now increase the value of the speed, maybe increase the duration, to have a more powerful version of the spell. So when it's cast now, you'll see a much bigger speed boost, but the amount of energy used is like relatively the same. So that's kind of like the idea there, where you start off on the copper CAD, you make some spells that maybe feel fun, useful, and that sort of thing, and as you progress up the CADs, you'll be able to get you know, stronger and stronger versions of those spells. There's also in-game documentation, which allows you to see, basically have a helping hand in-game of how to craft the CADs, the different stats of the CADs, the first starting and then the first sort of, you know, things you can do. Also explains how the grid works, how the node placement works, what the arrows mean. The arrows basically control the direction of where the inputs come from. And then we also have a section for like common spells. Common spells are basically spells that I've added in to basically give the player a helping hand in terms of making, you know, their first couple spells. We have an import code system, which basically takes the spell data and puts it into a code form that can be basically given out to people, you know, anyone. And in the spellcrafting, there is an import section. Once you click on it and, you know, press import, it will basically just load the spell into your thing. And then assuming that you have the nodes, it will work seamlessly. This basically creates that sort of community feel where many people could be working on a spell at once to try and you know, make something cool or showcase their work or that sort of stuff. Because, you know, with how the system is made, there is basically like, you know, an upwards number of spells that like I haven't even discovered yet. You know, just from the playtest that I've held with some of the community, you know, people are coming with new spells like I never even thought of. every single day. Another interesting spell is the Arcane Push spell, which yeah, will push an entity away from the player. And then I'll spawn a bison just to show it off. Yeah, and so every time you cast it, it'll push it back a little bit. An interesting upgrade you can do to this spell is you can turn it from a single cast into a continuous spell casting. That's by using the channel node, which will turn the spell into a, you know, cost per second, and it will push the entity back continuously until you run out of mana or until you stop. Another benefit of making spells this way is that currently it's a push, but let's say if you wanted to tweak the spell, since you have the circuit or the blueprint, you can go in and maybe set the value of 20 to -20, and now instead of a push spell, you should get a pull spell. If I can hit the target. And so that way you've just got like a makeshift telekinesis spell that works pretty well. And so yeah, that's pretty much how Arcanum works. Thank you for watching.